In this video, I'm going to take you through a walkthrough of the live stream setup that we use on Sunday mornings. Things have changed a fair bit over the last few months. I thought it was worthwhile taking you through step by step all the different desk configuration, the input channels and the mixes and so on. I'll try and cover as much as I can in the video, so it might be quite long this time, and I will try and keep it to the point. I won't go into lots of details on all the things like how you do all the different operations, because I've done that in lots of my other videos. So we'll stick to just the layout this time. We'll start with scenes. So if we go into the scenes menu, then we've got three that we're currently using, two that are really the main ones. We've got one that says live no band. That was the scene that we used prior to having live worship bands in the church. If we do pre-recorded, then we'll go back to using that one. And we've got two live band ones, one for Andrew's band and one for Jonathan's band. They are preset with the most likely instruments and vocalists that will be in those two bands. So when you come on a Sunday morning, if you've got Andrew leading worship or Jonathan leading worship, then those will be a good starting point. So we've already got one of those loaded. I'll go through and talk through the desk layout. So input channels first, left to right, layer A. So this will be what you see when you load the desk up. The first three are DCAs. These are for the band vocalists, the band instruments, labelled band, and drums. Those are just a way of muting or changing the level of all of those channels in one go. So if you want to mute or unmute the vocalists or the band or the drums, you can do that with one press. You can also change the relative levels by adjusting those faders. The number 4 here says Vox Reverb. This is a reverb effects on the vocalists who are singing. That applies to anybody who's singing. That's set up elsewhere, which I'll go into briefly a bit later. But you can adjust the amount of reverb. I should say that unless I say otherwise, everything that you see will affect both in the church building and live stream. There are some that are not, but I will talk about those specifically when I get to them. So vocals reverb in this case is both. Then we've got our vocalists. We've got a couple of those on here, guitar, flute, and then we've got our two drum mics. These are fairly new. We've got an overhead left and right being as you look at it from the back towards the front of church. So when I say left and right, I'm always talking about from the PA operator's point of view rather than stage. So they are standard band layout, so they would work as you would expect. Following on from that, the one that labelled room, that is actually a DCA, but that controls the level of the two room mics that we have just to either side of the stage there. Those are useful if you've got somebody speaking and you want to pick up the audience, the congregation responding. So if we're doing liturgy and it's spoken, if the preacher's speaking and you want to pick up reactions to the spoken, when people do applause, laugh, anything like that you want to pick up. I tend to use it any time that we have anybody who's speaking in church. We typically at the moment turn it off when the band is playing because we don't want to pick up the instruments and the band through those mics as well as through the normal PA. We may review that at some point. The next one is actually the stream matrix. This is the final stage before it goes out to the live stream. So this is only stream output only. Room is also stream output only, of course. We don't feed the room mics into the church itself. Stream matrix, yes, that's here. The main reason we've got it here is so that you can PFL it, so you can put your headphones in and you can listen to what's going on the stream. Generally, you shouldn't touch this other than using it to listen to. You don't need to mute it, you don't need to change the level because that's all set and that works quite nicely. We'll go into more specifics about how the stream is working later on when I get to the other areas. Then we've got the normal inputs that you'd expect, a CD player, which is under the rack here, the iPod, which is the 3.5mm jack cable lying on the desk to my side here. Next is PC. We still call it PC. It's actually the Mac Mini, which is situated down in front of you when you're standing at the desk here. That's split into two. The main PC input is labelled PC and is white on here. That is the input that comes in from the PC. So if I select it, that is the actual input channel. That controls what goes both in here in church and to the stream. That's set up a reasonably decent level that we think works, and probably shouldn't touch it for the most part. You don't even need to mute it and unmute it because it's silent when there's nothing playing. The blue one next to it, PC main, that controls the level of the volume of the PC sound only in church. So if you want to lower the level of the sound in church, then use the PC main rather than PC, because when we have things like intro videos for the live stream, you don't want it as loud in church. So you don't want to touch that because we want to leave it full volume for the stream. But changing this blue one, PC main, means you can control the volume in church and keep it a bit lower. And then the final four are the two handheld and the two lapel mics, exactly as you'd expect. That's layer A. That's what you will be familiar with if you've used this in church recently. I'll go now on to layer B and talk a bit more about what's on there. So if I select layer B, we have another set of channels. Some of them are repeats, so Vox Reverb, that's a repeat of what we had on layer A. That's the reverb for the vocalists in the band. We also have one that says drum reverb, and that's similar for the drums. I don't think we're actually using it very much at the moment, but that would allow you to add some reverb to the drums, obviously only for the live stream, because we don't send the drums in church at the moment, we just send those to the stream. The next three are the main three then that deal with the band going to the stream. We've got one for vocalists, STR Vox, one for the instruments, STR band, so that's guitar, keyboard, flute, bass, everything but the drums, which is the third one, the drums. So those three combine the inputs from layer A. So if I go back to layer A, I've got two vocalists, so they go into STR Vox. I've got a guitar and a flute. They all go into STR band. And then I've got the two drum overheads. They'll go to STR drum. The reason for having these three is that on those I can do more processing and a little bit of mixing before they go to the stream, separate from what happens in church. So primarily on here, what I've got is I've added some compression onto the vocals, onto the band, and onto the drums, which allows me to do some compression on those channels before they go into the stream. It also allows you to change the levels on those, which I'll cover a bit later on. Moving across, we've got room mics again. So the first one that says room is the DCA that you saw on layer A. So if I go back to layer A, that's room, that's the same thing. That's the DCA. The next two are the actual room mic input channels, left and right. Typically you won't need to touch those. They are set here, the levels, gain, etc. are about right. They only have a high pass filter on, but they are there if you ever you needed to access them if there was a problem with them. That's where they sit. Moving across, the last four then are our remaining stream channels. So we've got another reverb channel. This is for the spoken vocal mics. So this allows us to add a bit of reverb to the live stream when people are speaking at the front. Then there is a vocal group. This is where all of the handhelds and the lapel mics go. So for those spoken microphones, they come through this group. Again, that allows us to do some additional processing. So in this case, again, there's some compression that's been added to those. And typically you'd only get one mic at a time, but it would allow for multiple. STR group. This is the penultimate mix of everything that's going to our live stream. This is an aux channel. This is what all of these other dark blue ones feed into, including, and the FX. They all go into this one. This is the final mix before it goes out to the live stream, which is the purple one, the matrix for the stream. So that means you get the dark blue ones coming across into the light blue one, into the purple one. That is roughly the route for a live stream. So that covers all of the inputs. I've covered all the inputs, so let's have a look now at the mixes on the desk. I'm going to work my way down the right-hand side here and talk about the various FX channels, groups, and auxes. Start off main left right, so that should be lit up, and as a general rule of thumb, try and make sure you end up with that lit up when you finish doing anything, because that helps you to remember where you are. So down here then we have FX, so FX1, that is our vocals reverb, so that's for the band vocals and the vocal mics. Number 2 is where we send drums, so we're actually sending some of the the drum overheads to that, so we can, if we want to, add a bit of reverb to the drums. 3 is not being used. Number 4 is being sent from the spoken microphones, allowing us to add some reverb to the spoken microphones for the live stream only. Similar to the drums, we don't send that to the front of house because we've got enough of that in here already. The next 4 are our foldback, so you'll be used to those. They're the standard foldback speakers that we use for the band. The arrangement might be slightly different to normal, depending on how we've set things up at the front because of social distancing at the moment, but they are as you'd expect. Number 5 is not being used. Number 6 is the main group that is our mix point for the streaming. That is an aux channel, which means we have fader control over it, and you can then control the mix from there. So if I've selected 6 and I selected layer B, then you'll see that we're sending some vocal reverb. The vocalist, the band and the drums, room mics are going to that. We're also sending the group that's got the spoken microphones in and a bit of reverb on that as well. That is the main point that you would go to if you want to change the FX that's being sent to the stream, or you want to change the mix of the band that's going to the stream. That's where you do that. I'll come back and do a couple of examples of that in a little while. The main reason that we have that, of course, is for adding compression, so you can look at that as well on the same one here as you did when we did it across the input channels, because that's just a different view of it. Number 7, this is now the first group that we have. So a group doesn't have fader control, it's just a collection of channels that have been assigned to it. So if I go to the loop, that is basically the hearing loop and the vestry speaker. They both come off that. And you can look at that and you can see that different things have been assigned. So we've assigned things, we haven't assigned the drums to that, but we've assigned pretty much everything else on there. Number 8 is the spoken microphones. So if I look at a sign for that, you can see that the 2 handhelds and the 2 lapel mics are assigned to that one, but nothing else. The PC one is specifically just for the PC Mac Mini sound in church. So that's got that on there. And the last 3 then are the vocalists for the band. So you can see the 2 vocal mics assigned, the instruments for the band, and the drums. All being, as they're all being pre-linked and mixed to go out to the stream. Let's give a couple of examples of how you might want to use those. I'm back to my main left right, my layer A, which is where I'll typically be working for most of the time. And I think I'm listening to the stream, so I've got my headphones on, I've been monitoring that and think, oh, I think I'd like to adjust the level of the band a little bit. So the vocals could do with being a bit higher relative to the band. Maybe the band seems a bit loud today. So I want to adjust that. So what I can do is I select our stream group, number 6, go to layer B, where those groups are, and I see my vocals, my band and my drums. I can now adjust the relative levels of those going into the stream. If I adjust it directly on here, back on main left right, it'll affect what I hear in here as well. Now that might be what you want, in which case great, go ahead and do that. But if it sounds okay in here, and you only want to change what's going to the stream, then you'd come here. You can't control each individual channel, but you can say, well, actually, I'd like to make the band a bit louder or a bit quieter relative to the vocals, or I want to make the drums a bit quieter, or whatever. You can make those adjustments there. Maybe you want to take some of the reverb out of the vocalist in the band. Maybe you want to take a bit of reverb out from the spoken mics in the band. You can do that. They're probably the main ones that you're likely to want to change. The room mics, you can do that from the main layer because you've got a DCA for that. The others probably don't need any adjustments. Don't forget when you're finished, go back to left, right, and back to layer A, so that if you go away and come back, you don't forget where you are. Okay, that's everything. I think that's covered the main things that you're likely to need to know. Hopefully it gives you a good idea. And if there's things on there you need more detail on, give me a shout. Anything that I haven't covered in detail, I've probably covered in one of the previous videos, and I will try and link to those in the description underneath.